New this morning, breaking news. A new CNN poll shows that 2/3 of Americans want special counsel Robert Mueller to wrap up his Russia investigation before the November midterms. And for the first time, President Trump's approval rating is actually higher than some of his predecessors at this point in their presidency. What does this all mean? One man knows. CNN political director David Chalian joins us now with the new numbers. David.
Good morning, John. We'll get back to those big numbers you were talking about in the Russia investigation in a moment. First, his overall approval rating, President Trump at 42%. That's 3 points higher than our last poll, but he has just been remarkably consistent, staying in this low 40s range for basically the duration of his presidency. And you noted the bit of history we showed there, too, which is that for the first time in our polling, Donald Trump is not at the bottom of this list when we compare him to his predecessors at this point in their presidencies. In the August of the second year, Reagan, Clinton, and Carter all numerically below where Trump is now. Clearly, that will be welcome news. As for the Russia investigation, Donald Trump's overall approval rating is still pretty dismal. This is one of his worst issues, his handling of the Russia investigation. He's upside down 21 points, 34% approve, 55 disapprove. But this 34%, John, that's up 5 points. And what is driving it? Well, nearly 70% of Americans want to see him testify if he's indeed asked to do so under oath. It's those people, mainly Democrats, I should say, who are feeling a little bit better about how he's handling the investigation, which may give Trump and Rudy Giuliani some solace in their strategy that having Trump out there saying, hey, I want to sit down with Mueller, I want to talk to him, have these prolonged public negotiations, that may be actually helping his approval rating here. Then you mentioned the big number. I think this is the biggest number in our poll today. 66%, 2/3 of Americans think Bob Mueller should wrap this up before the midterms in November. And if you look at it by party, this is just astonishing because usually the Russia investigation is completely polarized. But if you look at this number by party, Republicans at 72%, 69% of independents say he should wrap up before the midterms, 57%, a majority of Democrats believe so. This is clearly going to be very welcome news to the president. He's going to use this as a message throughout the day, I'm sure, saying, see, we told Mueller he has to wrap it up. But I would just note, a majority of Democrats also want him to wrap it up, and that may be because they think there's some proof there, and that is going to somehow help them win the midterm election. So that may be what's going there. And in fact, when you look at Mueller's approval rating, he's up 6 points, 47%. Again, largely driven by Democrats, but up 6 points in his approval rating since the last poll. And what does it mean for the midterms and how people think the Russia investigation will impact their vote? 30% of Americans in this poll conducted by SSRS say it is extremely important to their vote. That's up 7 points, 15% very important, 53% not important. And again, Democrats are driving this. So we are seeing in this poll that Democrats are starting to really believe that this is an extremely important issue to their vote in November. John, Erica?
Right. What does it all mean? David Chalian, stick around. What does it mean for Omarosa? We'll discuss that as well. Joining us, Jeffrey Toobin, CNN chief legal analyst and staff writer for The New Yorker. Jeffrey Toobin, about this poll, that 66% want the Robert Mueller investigation wrapped up by the midterms is a fascinating number. As Chalian points out, it could be the Democrats think that it will help, that it will have incriminating information on the president. That's why they want it out. But just by historical comparison, if we can put up the list of past investigations, this has gone on for 15 months. That's not that long, relatively speaking. You look at Benghazi, Iran-Contra, which you know intimately well, yes. Whitewater. You know, it's not that long comparatively.
That's true. And if I may disagree with my younger identical twin, Brother Chalian, so what? I mean, 66%, they don't care about, I mean, like, first of all, Mueller doesn't care what his polling numbers are. But also, like, half those people want it over, as David said, because they think it's already proved that...
You just said, as David had said, so you're not disagreeing with me,
no,
Jeffrey.
I mean, well, yeah, I guess I sort of am disagreeing with you. I never like to disagree with you, David, but I just think this number doesn't tell us anything in particular. What I think is the most important thing about this poll, as you said at the beginning, Trump's numbers never change. I mean, we have breaking news on CNN constantly, whether it's Mueller or Helsinki or anything, and his polling numbers haven't changed outside the margin of error in a year and a half.
I will
mean,
say-
it's just amazing to me.
Perhaps the most offensive thing you said to David is that he looks like you.
That's true.
The
I know. Well,
identical
he
twin
should
thing,
probably
that was
sue,
low.
that alone,
was low.
Yeah, do we know where he'd get a good lawyer? The other thing that you bring up that I think is really interesting is when we look at this number of 2/3 say they want it wrapped up. Is that I want it wrapped up just to wrap it up because I want it done? And to me, what that paints is a very damaging picture for any investigation moving forward, that we get to the point where, well, it's all just about public perception. We don't want it wrapped up because the actual investigation itself is finishing up. We just want to be done.
Well, I think that if you were to ask the Republicans why they want it wrapped up, certainly that would be the reason. But Democrats want it wrapped up because they want impeachment proceedings to start. That's why it's very hard to unpack that 66% number.
But I mean, partially to your point, I mean moving forward, if this is the way we're looking at things, right? So now the next investigation, whatever it may be, they all of a sudden, as soon as it's announced, you want it over with because you want to get to that next part. And no one even cares about the findings anymore because everybody's made up their mind.
I mean, that's been the success, I think, of Rudy Giuliani to turn this into a completely partisan issue.
So, David Chalian,
it's that point, Jeffrey, why I think the poll number is significant, because as you've noted time and again, this is less about a legal strategy and much more about a political strategy. And so I agree with you. There are differences as to why Democrats want it over or Republicans want it over. I think that is a fascinating conversation to have. But the fact that 2/3 of Americans want to see this done before the midterms, the fact that the midterms, the importance of this investigation to people thinking about their midterm vote is on the rise, that Mueller's approval is on the rise, this is becoming a bigger issue than we'd seen. And the Trump-Giuliani camp talking point has been to wrap it up, and now they have a data point to help them sell that in the political argument that they want to make. That's why I think it's a pretty significant poll number.
And David, if I can ask you one of the Toobin sanctioned areas of the poll, which gets to the president's overall approval rating, which sits at 42%. If we can put up on the screen again where that ranks among past presidents. Because as you noted, David, for the first time, his approval rating is actually higher than past presidents at this time in their administration, Reagan, Clinton, and Carter, and below Obama in 2010. Again, the White House will look at this and say, hey, look, things are good for us. But the fact of the matter is every other president's gone up and down. Reagan, Clinton, Carter were all way above that at times and then actually went back above that from where they were here. Trump never moves. And one other point, we don't have this to put up on the screen, I'll just note, at 47% approval rating, President Obama lost 63 seats in the 2010 elections. Reagan, right around where Trump was, lost 26 seats in the midterms. Clinton in 94 lost 54 seats. So that, while it may be a number that, relatively speaking, looks better for the Trump administration, is still extremely perilous for them.
No doubt about it. His poll numbers are not good poll numbers. No president would say, hey, please let me just hang out in the low 40s for the entirety of my administration. He has been remarkably solid because people are so dug in on him, whether for him or against him. And we also do see the energy is a little bit, people feel more strongly opposed to him than they feel strongly for him. That's also been a remarkably stable trend, John. But I will note, you just cited the midterm losses for Obama, for Clinton, for Reagan. All three of those guys went on to win second terms.
I just think that's an extremely important point, that all these presidents have had terrible midterm elections, but go on to get reelected. Now, history does not necessarily repeat itself, but the fact that, a president can do really, really poorly in a midterm election does not mean that they won't get reelected.